Senator Blumenthal read an ICE agent's text message out loud in the hearing. The agent bragged about shooting a U.S. citizen 5 times, a woman named Marimar Martinez who was on her way to church to donate clothing and had no criminal record. The charges against her were dismissed. The agent celebrated it in a text. Mullin's response to this, and to a string of other documented abuses, a woman with a brain injury dragged from her car, a diabetic father denied insulin, Christian asylum seekers deported to regimes that tortured them, was simply, "I'm not familiar. I need to look into it." Blumenthal wasn't asking for a briefing. He was asking for basic human accountability. He didn't get it. Let's watch. I'll break it down.
To the nominee. I can't control what you ask, but that's my hope. Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Senator Mullin, just months before the war with Iran began, the Trump administration negotiated a back-channel agreement, a deal with the Islamic Republic to deport Iranian nationals, including asylum seekers, dissidents. There have been public reports about it. CNN on January 26, 2026. New York Times reported it in a couple of articles in September and December, that flights in around that time deported tens of those kinds of Iranian nationals back to Iran as part of this secret agreement. I want to tell you about one husband and wife, Christian converts from Islam, who were sentenced in absentia to 9 and 11-year sentences by the Islamic Republic. They fled to the United States seeking asylum, but they were detained by ICE on arrival. The wife was deported. She managed to take refuge in Turkey. The husband, I'll call him Mr. H, is still here, but he's facing deportation despite showing scars from the beating he received by a government gang. I have both of their declarations. I'd like them to be entered in the record. There are Iranian-American organizations like the Iranian-American Legal Defense Fund that have further information. I have no doubt that you share my outrage about the treatment of this couple and other Iranian nationals who were deported possibly to torture and death in Iran. Will you agree with me and commit that we should stop deporting such people?
Ma'am, sir, I don't know the specifics behind this. I think before I can talk about in hypotheticals, I would need to know what the reasons behind it, but I don't want to deport anybody that's here illegally, or here legally, I mean. And most definitely not individuals that have done everything possible to be a contributor to society. But in these specific cases, I don't know. I'm not familiar with them. I don't know if there's something else in the background that would cause the administration
I'm talking
to do it.
in general about tens of people, as many as 55 on one flight, 15 or so on another, not just this couple. But in principle, we should not be sending Iranian dissidents and asylum seekers back to Iran. Wouldn't you agree?
Sir, we do know that our enemies want to infiltrate us and use our rules and our generosity against us. And so I don't know the specifics of these. I don't know their background. I don't know what the reasons was, but I will be happy to look into it.
Let me ask you about another topic. I'm glad that you've committed that there will not be the kind of review that Secretary Noem imposed on contracts above a certain amount uniformly by your office. But I'd like your commitment that you will help us investigate another abuse of authority. Corey Lewandowski apparently was in charge of approving all contracts. One of them was a $220 million contract that was related directly to Kristi Noem's being fired. They bypassed procurement rules to award that contract to a shell company that was created days before to benefit a Republican consulting firm with close ties to Secretary Noem and Mr. Lewandowski. Will you commit to cooperating with our investigation, the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation, making documents and personnel available to congressional and other investigations into those contracts awarded by Secretary Noem and Mr. Lewandowski?
Senator, I've heard these same reports. I know the IG, Joseph, I don't know him personally. That's why I say Joseph. Some people call him Joe. Is open investigations. We will cooperate with him.
And provide all the documents and records that are necessary for this committee to do its work. That's what I'm asking.
I'll do everything that's required of me by law, but the IG will be doing the investigation, and we'll let the IG, decide what documents he's going to share, and maybe you can bring that up with him.
Well, in fact, Secretary Noem obstructed the investigations underway by the IG. In fact, in at least 10 investigations, they were the subject of a letter from the IG. Are you committing to immediately begin restoring the department's working relationship with the IG?
If confirmed, absolutely. I will do everything required of me by law and the policies that you guys give me. There won't be any gray area with me. We want to have a good relationship with the IG. He's got a job to do, and every other agency that's underneath DHS
and you'll
has a job
cooperate
to do.
with the committee in providing those.
Sir, I've everything that is required of me to report, and anything that you want the IG to do, that's between you and the IG.
Senator Mullins, I don't think I need to tell you that the American people have been appalled and angered by what they've seen in the excessive use of force. We've had hearings before the Permanent Subcommittee on Investigation that have shown Aliyah Rahman, a woman suffering from traumatic brain injury, yanked from her car in Minneapolis, dragged by her arms, leading both of her shoulders to be torn. Javier Ramirez, a father of 4 from California, detained for 4 days and refused medical treatment for his diabetes. We documented these abuses in a report that we issued and in hearings that we conducted. One of them was Marimar Martinez, who was on her way to donate clothing at a local church when she came across agents in an unmarked car. Agents sideswiped her car. 3 masked agents in camouflage stormed out, and one of them pulled out his gun and fired at her moving vehicle, hitting her 5 times. And the agent then bragged about it. He bragged about it in a text. He said, I have an MOF, I won't detail it. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. Shouldn't we be disgusted by an agent that fires at a U.S. citizen, no criminal record? She was charged.
Senator Blumenthal.
The charges were dismissed. Wouldn't you agree with me that that agent should not be carrying a firearm?
I'm not familiar with the investigation, sir, and I don't know if the investigation is completed. As Secretary, I'm sure I'll be briefed on this.
All right, time's expired. I know.
There is a text message in this hearing that should be printed out and hung on every wall of every DHS facility in the country, not because it's evidence of a single bad apple, but because it is a window into a culture. I have an MF. I won't detail it. I fired 5 rounds, and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. This is not the language of a professional law enforcement officer describing a justified use of force. This is the language of someone who enjoyed what they did, who saw shooting a person as an achievement, who bragged about it to colleagues like it was a trophy. The woman he shot was Marimar Martinez. She was on her way to church to donate clothing. She had no criminal record. She encountered agents in an unmarked car. They sideswiped her vehicle. 3 masked agents in camouflage stormed out. One of them pulled his gun and fired at her moving car. 5 rounds, 7 holes. And then he bragged about it. She was charged. The charges were dismissed. The case was thrown out of court. But the agent? The agent who fired 5 rounds at an unarmed woman on her way to church, who bragged about it in a text message. As far as we know, that agent is still carrying a firearm, still wearing a badge, still empowered by the United States government to use deadly force against American citizens. And Marquain Mullin, the man who wants to be confirmed to a position of authority over DHS, is not familiar with the investigation. He doesn't know if it's completed. He's sure he'll be briefed on it as secretary. That's his answer. Not that agent should be fired. Not that text is disgusting. Not no one who brags about shooting an American citizen should ever wear a badge again. Just, I'm not familiar. This is a pattern. Blumenthal runs through case after case. Aaliyah Ramirez, a woman with a traumatic brain injury, yanked from her car, dragged by her arms until both shoulders dislocated. Javier Ramirez, a father of 4, detained for 4 days, denied insulin for his diabetes while he begged for medical treatment. These are not hypotheticals. These are documented abuses. These are people, American citizens, treated like enemies in their own country. And the nominee for a position that oversees the agency responsible for these abuses has nothing to say. He doesn't know the specifics. He needs to look into it. He'll be briefed. But here's the thing. These cases have been in the news. They've been the subject of hearings. They've been documented in reports. The text message about Miramar Martinez has been public. The Iranian deportations have been covered by CNN and the New York Times. The $220 million contract scandal has been in every major outlet. The IG's letter about obstructed investigations is a matter of public record. So when Mullin says he's not familiar, he's either telling the truth, in which case he has been spectacularly uninformed about the agency he wants to help lead, or he's not, in which case he's deflecting. Neither is acceptable. Blumenthal starts with the Iranian deportations, a secret back-channel agreement, flights deporting asylum seekers, dissidents, Christian converts. One couple, sentenced to 9 and 11 years by the Islamic Republic for their faith. They fled. They came here seeking safety. The wife was deported anyway. She made it to Turkey. The husband is still here, facing deportation, showing scars from the beating he received from government thugs. Blumenthal asks for a simple commitment. Stop deporting people like this. People who will be tortured. People who will be killed. People who came to America seeking the protection we claim to offer. Mullin's response is to suggest they might be infiltrators. Our enemies want to use our generosity against us. He doesn't know their background. He doesn't know the reasons. He'll look into it. That's not a commitment. That's a hedge. That's leaving the door open to deport more asylum seekers to torture and death, as long as someone somewhere can claim there's a national security justification. Then Blumenthal moves to the contracts. The $220 million. The shell company formed days before. The connections to Noam and Lewandowski. The IG's open investigations. The 10 investigations that Noam obstructed. Mullin says he'll cooperate with the IG. He'll do what's required by law. But when Blumenthal asks about cooperating with Congress, Mullin defers. Anything you want the IG to do is between you and the IG. That's not cooperation. That's passing the buck. That's saying, I'll do the minimum required and no more. And then comes the text message. Blumenthal reads it slowly, deliberately, so everyone in the room and everyone watching at home can hear every word. I have an MF. I won't detail it. I fired 5 rounds and she had 7 holes. Put that in your book, boys. He asked the question that should be obvious. Shouldn't that agent not be carrying a firearm? Shouldn't we be disgusted? And Mullin says he's not familiar with the investigation. He doesn't know if it's completed. As secretary, he'll be briefed. There is no outrage, no disgust, no acknowledgement that an agent who brags about shooting an American citizen is a danger to every American citizen. Just the same non-answer he's given to every other question. This is what oversight looks like when it works. A senator with a binder full of cases, a list of names, a text message that should shame the entire agency, sitting across from a nominee who has no answers. And the nominee isn't hostile. He's not defensive. He's not even evasive in a clever way. He's just blank, unaware, unprepared, unwilling to commit to anything beyond what the law requires. But the law requires a lot. The Constitution requires that the government not deport people to torture, that it not shoot American citizens on their way to church, that it not brag about it afterward, that it not obstruct investigations into its own misconduct, that it not award $220 million contracts to shell companies created days before. The law requires all of that, and the people who enforce the law are supposed to be the ones who uphold it. But here's the truth. The law doesn't enforce itself. It's enforced by people, by leaders who care enough to know what's happening in their agencies, by nominees who come to hearings prepared to answer for the abuses that happened on their watch, by secretaries who see a text message about shooting a citizen and demand that agent be stripped of their badge immediately. Mullin is not that leader. He's not that nominee. And if he's confirmed, he's not going to be that secretary. He's going to be the one who needs to be briefed, who will look into it, who will let the IG handle it, who will do what's required by law and no more. And while he waits to be briefed, another American citizen might be shot on their way to church. Another asylum seeker might be deported to torture. Another agent might brag about it in a text message because no one in charge cared enough to stop it.